At last I sat down on the ground to rest, for there seemed to be ground solid enough to rest upon, and while I sat there I saw glimmering through the darkness a light. As I drew near it I saw a great haze of light radiating from a room which I could see, but it was so bright it hurt my eyes to look upon it, as it would looking at the noonday sun on earth have done. I could not bear it, and would have turned away, when a voice said, "Stay, weary wanderer, here are only kind hearts and helping hands for you. And if you would see your love, come in, for she is here, and you may speak with her." Then I felt a hand, for I could see no one, draw my mantle over my head to shut out the brightness of the light, and then lead me into the room and seat me in a large chair. I was so weary, and so glad to rest. And in this room there was such peace, it seemed to me that I had found my way to heaven. After a little I looked up and saw two gentle, kindly women who were like angels to my eyes, and I said to myself, "I have come near to heaven surely." Again I looked, and by this time my eyes seemed strengthened, for beyond those two fair good women, and at first I could scarce believe it, so great was my joy, I saw my beloved herself smiling, sadly but tenderly, at where I sat. She smiled, but I knew she did not really see me. One of the ladies did, though, and she was describing me to my darling in a low, quiet voice. My darling seemed so pleased, for it confirmed to her what the man had told her. She had been telling these ladies what a remarkable experience she had had, and how it seemed to her like a strange dream. I could have cried out to her then that I was truly there, that I still lived, still loved her, and was trusting in her love for me, but I could not move. Some spell was over me, some power I could dimly feel was holding me back. And then those two kind ladies spoke, and I knew they were not angels yet, for they were still in their earthly bodies, and she could see and speak to them. They said much of what the kind good man had done, as to the hope there was for sinners like me. The same voice which had bidden me to enter now asked would I like one of the ladies to write a message for me. I said yes, 1,000 times yes. Then I spoke my words, and the Spirit caused the lady to write them down. I said to my beloved that I still lived, still loved her. I bid her never to forget me, never to cease to think of me, for I required all her love and help to sustain me. I was ever the same to her, though now I was weak and helpless and could not make her see me. And she gave me such sweet words in return, I cannot write them down. They are too sacred to me, and still rest in my heart forevermore. The period that followed this interview was one of deep sleep for me. I was so exhausted that when I left that room I wandered on a little way and then sank down upon the ground in deep, dreamless unconsciousness. What did it matter where I rested when all was as night around me? How long my sleep lasted I know not. At that period I had no means of counting time save by the amount of suffering and misery through which I passed. From my slumbers I awoke refreshed in a measure, and with all my senses stronger in me than before. I could move more rapidly, my limbs felt stronger and freer, and I was now conscious of a desire to eat I had not felt before. My longing grew so great that I went in search of food, and for a long time could find none anywhere. At last I found what looked like hard dry bread. A few crusts only, but I was glad to eat them, whereupon I felt more satisfied. Here I may say that spirits do eat the spiritual counterpart of your food, do feel both hunger and thirst, as keen to them as your appetites are to you on earth, although neither our food nor our drink would be any more visible to your material sight than our spiritual bodies are, and yet for us they possess objective reality. Had I been a drunkard or a lover of the pleasures of the table in my earthly body, I should much sooner have felt the cravings of appetite. As it was, nature with me had ever been easily satisfied, and though at first I turned from those dry crusts in disgust, a little reflection told me that I had now no way of procuring anything. I was like a beggar, and had better content myself with a beggar's fare. My thoughts had now turned to my beloved again, and the thoughts carried my spirit with them, so that I found myself entering once more the room where I had last seen her and the two ladies. This time I seemed to pass in at once, and was received by two spirit men whom I could but very faintly see. A veil seemed to hang between us, through which I saw those two spirit men, the ladies and my beloved. I was told that I might again give a message to her through the lady who had written my words before. I was so anxious to try if I could not make my darling write down my words herself as I had seen her guardian spirit do, that I was allowed to try. To my disappointment I found I could not do it. She was deaf to all I said, and I had to give up that idea and let the lady write for me as before. After I had given my message I rested for a short time and watched my beloved one's sweet face, as I had been wont to do in other happier days. My musings were interrupted by one of those spirit men. A grave, handsome young man he seemed to be so far as I could see him. He spoke to me in a quiet, kindly voice, and said that if I truly desired to write my own words through my darling herself, it would be well for me to join a brotherhood of penitents who like myself desired to follow out the better way, and with them I should learn many things of which I was yet ignorant, and which would help me to fit myself to control her mind, as well as give me the privilege I sought of being with her at all times while she dwelt on earth. This way of repentance was hard, he said, very hard. The steps many, the toil and sufferings great, but it led to a fair and happy land at last where I should rest in happiness, such as I could not dream of now. He assured me, even as the kind earthly men had done, that my deformed body, which I was still so anxious to hide from my beloved one's eyes, would change as my spirit changed, till I should be once more fair to look upon, such as she would no longer grieve to see. Were I to remain upon the earth plane as I now was, I should most likely be drawn back into my former haunts of so-called pleasure, and in that atmosphere of spiritual degradation I should soon lose the power to be near my darling at all. For her own sake those who guarded her would be obliged to exclude me. On the other hand, were I to join this brotherhood, which was one of hope and endeavor, I should be so helped, so strengthened, and so taught, that when in due course my time came to return to the earth plane, I should have acquired a strength and an armor that could resist its temptations. I listened to the words of this grave, courteous spirit with wonder and a growing desire to know more of this brotherhood of whom he spoke, and begged he would take me to them. This he assured me he would do, and he also explained that I should be there of my own free will and choice only. Did I desire at any time to leave, I could at once do so. All are free in the spirit world, he said. All must follow only where their own wishes and desires lead them. If you study to cultivate the higher desires, means will be given you to attain them, and you will be strengthened with such help and strength as you may need. You are one who has never learned the power of prayer. You will learn it now, for all things come by earnest prayer, whether you are conscious that you pray or not. For good or for evil, your desires are as prayers, and call around you good or evil powers to answer them for you. As I was again growing weary and exhausted, he suggested that I should bid adieu to my darling for a time. He explained that I should gain more strength as well, and permit her to do so if I left her for the time I was to remain in this place of which he spoke. It would also be well that she should not try to write for 3 months, as her mediumistic powers had been greatly tried, and if she did not rest them she would be much impaired, while I would require all that time to learn even the simple lessons needful before I could control her. Ah me, how hard it seemed to us both to make this promise! But she set me the example, and I could but follow it. If she would try to be strong and patient, so should I, and I registered a vow that if the God I had so long forgotten would remember and pardon me now, I would give all my life and all my powers to undo the wrongs that I had done. And so it was that I left for a time the troubled earth plane of the spirit world of which I had as yet seen so little, but in which I was yet to see and suffer so much. As I left the room to go with my new guide, I turned to my loved and waved my hand in farewell, and asked that the good angels and the God I dare not pray to for myself might bless her and keep her safe forevermore. And the last thing I saw was her tender eyes following me with that look of love and hope which was to sustain me through many a weary, painful hour.